Hello everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. I'm Angelia and today it's time for Friday Reads on May 16th. I want to talk about the week in reading and a few other things, but first we need to have a t-shirt appreciation moment. You can only see part of it, but you really have to see the whole thing because that's where the attitude is. So I just got this shirt, I got it from Etsy, and as you may or may not know, I live in Corpus Christi, Texas, down on the Gulf of Mexico. As you can see, Gulf of Mexico, which was named by Spanish explorers in the 1500s. It had names before the 1500s. Indigenous people already lived here, so this isn't even its first name. And then at the bottom it says, stay salty and resist. And I love our local sea turtles as well. So I had to get this shirt. If you're going to rename it at all, we should go backwards and investigate its original names, but I'm not having any part about recent renaming efforts. In television news, we had Wi-Fi problems for a few days, 2 or 3 days. It was super frustrating. It just kept cutting in and out. I don't know if it's the weather because it was extremely windy and it got really hot and gusty winds here. And so it was just annoying, and we both like to read. So if the TV is cutting in and out, we just sort of say, poop, let's just go read. So we did that, but then it started working again. So last night we resumed. We're watching The Four Seasons, which is a remake of it. Now it's in episodes. I think there's 8 episodes on Netflix, but it's a remake of the old movie with Alan Alda, who does have a cameo role in this new production. And we're enjoying it so far. And if I ever saw that movie back in the 70s, I don't remember. So I don't know exactly where the plot is going. So now we may move right on into the books. So this week I finished a couple of things, maybe like 3 things and almost another thing. So let's just run down through it. So the first book that I finished was Two Trees Make a Forest by Jessica Lee. And this book was the selection for May in the Reading the Globe project hosted by Roz and Katja. And it's a nonfiction book, so it counted for my nonfiction book of the month as well, in case I don't get to another one. And I'm also counting it for Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, even though the author is Asian, Canadian, British. It's about a woman who decides to go to Taiwan and try to get more in touch with the past of her grandparents. So Jessica Lee's, on her mother's side, her family is Chinese who immigrated to Taiwan before coming to Canada. And then on her father's side, she's British. So she has a lot of gaps in her knowledge about her grandparents' past that she tries to fill through some trips to Taiwan. And so it's kind of a combination. It's a memoir. It's also a nature book because she is an environmental writer, and there's a lot of hikes and discussion of the topography and the plant life and the botanical history of Taiwan. And then there's other history as well that kind of gives a backdrop to the story of how especially her grandfather, his military history, how he came to end up deciding to move to Canada, how both of her grandparents who began living in China and then they moved to Taiwan and then eventually to Canada. I've said that like 3 times now. I learned things about Taiwanese history. I didn't know a whole lot, so I learned some things that were interesting, and the nature writing was lovely as well. But the part that was the most interesting to me was the memoir part, and there wasn't really enough of that in there. I wanted more memoir. I had so many unanswered questions, and she'd get back onto the part about her grandparents. I'd be like, oh, good. And she'd tell a little more, and then all of a sudden she's segued to describing this long hike and camping trip that she's on, and I think, okay, that's great, that's interesting, but can we get back to the grandparents? So to me, the blend of the different aspects, I did not dislike it, and I found each part to have its merits and interesting features, and I enjoyed the learning that I got from it. But as far as it weaving together into a satisfying whole, it didn't quite hit the mark for me. Another book that I liked, but it didn't blow me away, that I read this week was Mina's Matchbox by Yoko Ogawa, and the translator was Snyder. This book actually was published in 2020, but it just came out in the English translation in 2024. And I've been interested in this author. There's another book by her that I'm considering for my science fiction double feature reading project that is called The Memory Police. So if you've ever read that one, drop me a comment about whether or not I should put it in my project. But this one's not speculative whatsoever. It's more of a historical, I guess it's kind of a historical fiction because it's set in 1972. But this is about basically an adult woman today remembering when she was 13 years old and the year that she spent with her wealthy relatives. Tomoko is a young girl who lives with her mother. Her father has died several years before, and she and her mother kind of struggles to make ends meet. So her mother decides the year that Tomoko is transitioning from elementary to middle school that the mom is going to go and spend a year in Tokyo intensively studying to be a dressmaker. She's already works at a textile factory, but she wants a higher paid job to keep things more secure for she and her daughter. So she's going to go and live in the dorms and study and just immerse herself in that for a year. And she sends Tomoko to go live with her sister's family. Now, right here, I'm already kind of wondering, well, why were they not helping them out more? Maybe the mom didn't accept the help or something like that. But because the family is very, very wealthy, Tomoko goes to live with them. They live in, well, I don't know if they actually have like big Victorian mansions in the countryside of Japan, but it kind of has that feel. It's a big sprawling house with lots of floors and lots of rooms and libraries and offices and attics and things like that. And she shows up, and there's a little bit of a misleading description in the jackety thing, because it sort of insinuates that it's going to be one of those stories where somebody goes to stay with their relatives and then they just see all this stuff going on. There's secrets and things boiling up. And it's really not that dramatic. This is a very quiet book. And it's not one of those stories where she comes in and she can't fit in, or somebody's mean, or she doesn't get along. It's not like that at all. They're very welcoming. They're very kind. She has this kind of dashing, handsome uncle who's sort of mysterious because he leaves for weeks at a time and nobody knows, but nobody talks about where he is, and they don't seem to think this is a problem. But she's always wondering, well, where did he go? And she has a German grandmother. Well, it's not her grandmother, but it's her cousin's grandmother is German, and she's never quite gotten the hang of Japanese. So she is there, a Japanese aunt, a pair of housekeepers, a groundskeeper and a housekeeper who's the real heart of the family and really runs the show, and then her cousin Mina. And her cousin is close to her in age, a year behind, but she has chronic health problems. So she's very small for her age. She's frail. She has frequent hospitalizations, asthma attacks, and she rides to school on a hippopotamus, which is what we have here on the cover. And they actually have a pygmy hippopotamus that the father received as a gift when he was a child. And there's the grounds at this house of a former zoo that this family sponsored. Their wealth comes from a soda that they make called Fressy, and they talk about the Fressy constantly throughout the whole book. And it was freaking me out because at the very beginning they said it was a radium infused soda that promotes health and digestion, and I couldn't get past radium because I did a little research, and there were radium sodas in the 20s and 30s, but once they figured out that they were killing people, they didn't make them anymore. And this book is set in the 70s. So I don't know. I kept thinking that it was going to come into the plot and be the reason why, for different ailments that people had in the story, but not really. Anyway, so the family, they're mildly eccentric. They have a hippopotamus, and it's from the 13-year-old's point of view. So the different idiosyncrasies or odd habits or rules that the family engages in, she doesn't question them too much. She's not a very rebellious 13-year-old. And it goes throughout this year, and nothing much happens. So you have to go in knowing that it's not going to be a book that builds up to any huge insights or climaxes. It's just a quieter story. A lot of it is about Tomoko and Mina and their friendship, just a kind of bond and the secret life apart from the adults, but not secret in a dangerous way. They spend a lot of time. They have some crushes. Mina has a Matchbox collection, and she makes up long, elaborate stories based on the pictures on the matchboxes. She has a big, very vivid, imaginative inner life because she doesn't get out very much. And they go through the year of 1972. They get caught up in the Japanese volleyball team making a run for the gold in the Olympics, and she experiences a traditional German Christmas courtesy of the grandmother. It's just a kind of a year in the life, and then there's some reflections at the end from the adult perspective. So if you want a quiet-paced, well-written book that you're not expecting any particular fireworks in the plot, you may enjoy this. And it did kind of, the first half went pretty fast for me, and then it kind of bogged down in the middle where I started to wonder. I had to make peace with the fact that there was not really going to be a lot of plot, and then I was okay again. So that was Mina's Matchbox. And I am curious about this other book she wrote that sounds much more science fiction-y. So I'm going to have to take another look at that. And then the third book that I finished this week was my favorite finisher, and that was my reread of The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I am not quite ready to put this book away. I'm going to go back through all the 200 million tabs and see what I was wanting to come back to and think about again. I cannot tell you how many times I've read The Great Gatsby. I really don't know. Every few years I read it again since high school. And I think the very, very, very first time I ever read it, I was probably, like many people, kind of dazzled by the 1920s setting and the parties and the clothes and the beautiful shirts and the flowing illegal champagne and all of that. But every time I reread it, it's one of those books, again, that it's kind of a weird that it's a comfort read, because every time I reread it, it's kind of darker and sadder. It's a story that is really a different story once you look past the glitter. And that's what I love about it. And the characters are really problematic, and they get worse and worse the more times that you read. I think once upon a time, when I first read this, the first couple times, I didn't hold Nick very accountable. And then the more I read it, I have more problems with him, and the gap between the way he's perceiving himself or the way that he wishes to present himself with the reality of himself. Nick is our narrator, and he is a young man who spends a year living next door to Jay Gatsby, a self-made through dubious means, a very wealthy man who is trying to reclaim his lost love, Daisy Buchanan, who's married to Tom, who is a brutal, racist, awful person. And all in this backdrop of the 1920s and the fast-paced, hard-partying lifestyle. And we have a few other side characters. The only character in this book that has no problematic red flags at all is the man with the owl glasses, who appears in the library at a party scene and is absolutely astonished that all the books are real and not just cardboard facsimiles. And to me, that is one of the most timely comments in the whole book, because you see now where people can buy books by the yard that are color coordinated so that they aesthetically look pleasing in their house, and the kind of fake library thing. And I guess that was a thing back then, because he's amazed that the library is real books. But there's other things in this story that are just pretty cardboards, and there's something missing behind the facade. So it's that whole thing. I just love that part. And I love his reappearance at the end of the book. To really get into this would take a whole video, all of my thoughts about The Great Gatsby, the themes, the characters, some of the absolutely exquisite sentences that appear in this book. I could go on and on, but I shall not. But I'm going to go on and on with myself, and I'm going to quit doing this. I'm going to do it one more time, and just kind of rest within that atmosphere of Gatsby a little bit more before I put it away on the shelf until my next time that I decide to read it. And that brings me to currently reading, and then I'm almost done with not Death of a Salesman. This is clearly The Crucible by Arthur Miller. I'm almost finished with The Crucible. I'm going to finish it today. We're talking about it in Endless Drama, and so I'm going to kind of save my thoughts, but it is, again, it's another one of those pieces of literature that when you read it and reflect on it in today's atmosphere, it just opens back up once again. A story about something that happened in American history in the 1600s, written in the early 1950s, implied commentary on events going on at that time, reading it in 2025, and it's commenting on today as well. So I'm going to finish that up and hop back into Discord to talk about that some more. In my explorations of poetry, this week I have been dipping in and out of another anthology that I've had for decades. It's called Strong Measures, Contemporary American Poetry in Traditional Forms, and the editors are Philip Dacey and David Jauss. And it's just another collection that I've had forever. I think it was published in the mid-'80s, so that's the cutoff as far as contemporary. 1986. I think I got it when I was in graduate school. And I don't think I got it for a class. I think I just got it for myself. And so it's really thick. There's a ton of poets, those people that write the poetry, poets. And I don't have anything particular. I don't have any jewels like Flo Smoot to share right now. And there's a poet named Floyd Skloot. Flo Smoot and Floyd Skloot. Okay, I'm gonna read. Here's a tab. I'm gonna read Floyd Skloot's contribution today. This has been keeping me company this week. I don't have any profound thoughts to share about it. I'm just enjoying some poems. So what's coming up? I'm right at a crossroads because I'm finishing things, and that opens me up to other things in my TBR. On Sunday, I am going to dip into Dangerous, Scary Waters with Mercy Watson to the Rescue by Kate DiCamillo. Now, if this is not a mental health book, I don't know what is. It is a silly beginning reader about a family that has a pig that they raise like a daughter, and her adventures and her deep abiding love of buttered toast. My friend Michael and I are rereading all of the works of Kate DiCamillo in publication order. And so we've just hit the first batch of the Mercy Watsons, and we're going to talk about this one on Sunday. And then I have another buddy read starting this week in a few days with Louise, who lives in Australia, and we're going to read Dear Dickhead by an author whose name I say different every time. Today I'm going to say Virginie Despentes. And the translator is Frank Wynne. And so I bought this a few months ago, and Louise and I have been planning to read it together for a while, and trying to identify the perfect hole in our schedules, and we have located it. So I'll be talking about this next week. And then I also picked another book from my mental health May pile of possibilities that I want to start. I'll probably start this one today, and that is Murder at Gull's Nest by Jess Kidd. I've been really looking forward to reading this new book by Jess Kidd, and I understand that it is kind of a cozy mystery, which isn't what I usually read, but I'm up for it because I love the way that Jess Kidd writes, and it just has this really cute cover, and it is a murder mystery. The detective is a recently, I don't know if you say you quit if you were a nun. Nora Breen asked to be released from her vows. She quits being a nun, and she goes to find out why her friend that she corresponds with has stopped answering her letters, and she encounters a bunch of eccentric people in a seaside town, and I guess she solves a murder. I don't know if it's her friend that got murdered or somebody else, but Nora Breen is the detective, and it's apparently the beginning of a series. All right, so that is it. Whatever else I squeeze into the upcoming week remains to be seen, and the super loud air conditioner has come on, so it's probably it's like the hook dragging me off the stage. So I'm going to wrap it up right there. Tell me what you've been reading this week. Have you read any of these books? What do you have on the horizon? Anything exciting coming up? We will check back in a couple days. I am working on my plans for my next video, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.